I didn't think my wedding photo would feel like an act of war, but the second I hit send, my phone lit up like a grenade in my pocket. Missed calls, angry texts, guilt-soaked voicemails. My family wasn't just upset. They were livid. How dare I choose my own future instead of the one they designed for me? How dare I love the man I chose, Samuel, over the son of my father's best friend? I'm Nicole. Until yesterday, I thought the worst my parents could do was give Samuel another cold shoulder or exile his flowers to the kitchen counter. But now they want me to erase 2 years of love and loyalty like it was a childish phase, a disposable crush. We met the way real stories sometimes do, unplanned, messy, and unforgettable. It was at one of Alexander's monthly game nights, the kind where the chips are stale, the soda is cheap, and everyone argues over board game rules like their lives depend on it. Samuel made some sarcastic joke about Monopoly being late-stage capitalism in disguise, and I laughed harder than I had in months. From that moment, something dangerous and magnetic grew between us. But to my parents, tradition isn't just a word, it's their oxygen. My dad works himself raw to provide. My mum can turn one pot roast into 7 dinners. And together, they've built a worldview where sacrifice means control, and family first really means father decides. Samuel was tolerated, yes, but only as long as I treated him like a passing guest in my life. Yesterday, at our weekly Sunday dinner, I learned how fragile that tolerance was. Mum was in her element, stretching the pot roast into eternity, Maria glued to her phone, Dad half absorbed in the TV. I should have noticed the extra plates sooner. "Who else is coming?" I asked, tossing salad beside my mother. "Oh, Jack and Raymond," she answered too casually, like this wasn't a setup. Jack, Dad's lifelong best friend, still clung to the glory days of high school camaraderie. Raymond, his son, was a stranger to me. 27, buttoned into a shirt so new the creases hadn't relaxed yet. He carried himself like someone forced into an ill-fitting role, which, as I'd soon learn, wasn't far from the truth. Dinner began innocently enough, but I noticed the cracks. Mum kept slipping Raymond the choicest cuts of meat, while darting me those pointed, almost conspiratorial glances. Maria kicked me under the table until my shin throbbed, widening her eyes in silent warning. Then, like a bad play reaching its climax, Dad cleared his throat. "Nicole," he began, his tone already heavy with inevitability, "Jack and I have been talking." My stomach sank. "Raymond is ready to settle down," Jack interrupted, grinning like this was some grand announcement instead of a noose tightening around my neck. "And we thought, what better match than our families joining together?" The water caught in my throat, I nearly choked. "It makes sense," Dad continued without looking at me. "Jack and I are expanding the business. Raymond will take over his father's part eventually. You two would be the perfect match." Perfect. A word sharp enough to slice my patience. I stared at Raymond, who couldn't even meet my eyes, his fork suspended mid-air like he was afraid it might betray him. My mouth was dry, but I forced the words out anyway. "I'm dating Samuel." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mum waved her hand dismissively, her voice saccharine. "Oh, sweetheart, that's just a phase. We're talking about your real future here." "Your mother's right," Dad added, his jaw tightening. "Samuel's fine, but he'll never amount to much. Raymond has stability, a future." I could feel my pulse drumming in my temples. My hands clenched the napkin so tight the threads tore. "This is insane," I snapped. I'm not marrying Raymond. I love Samuel." Dad's face darkened to that dangerous shade of purple I knew too well, the prelude to an explosion. His voice, low and vibrating with anger, carried more weight than if he'd shouted. "This isn't about love, Nicole. This is about family, about duty." I pushed back my chair. the leg screeching across the floor. "You have until the end of the month," he barked as I stormed to the door. "End things with that boy, or we'll announce your engagement at Jack's birthday." The door slammed behind me before I could scream what I really wanted to say. Samuel's car was parked around the corner, his headlights slicing the night. We were supposed to go to Walmart after dinner, buy laundry detergent and cheap curtains for his apartment, mundane things that felt like the foundation of something real. Instead, I slid into the passenger seat with trembling hands, my chest tight as if my father's words had wrapped around me like chains. That was last night. This morning, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Mum's messages ooze guilt, pleading with me to be reasonable. Dad hasn't texted, which is worse. His silence feels like thunder waiting to break. And Maria? She sent me nothing but a string of frantic WTF texts. And now, the photo I sent. Samuel and me, hand in hand, rings on our fingers, smiling like fugitives who stole their own happiness. The war has officially begun. The warnings came fast, like aftershocks. Dad's serious about this. You can't ignore him forever. Even my cousin Victoria called, not to check in, but to whisper if the rumours were true. Samuel and I stayed up late last night in his shoebox of a studio, talking in hushed voices, as though my parents could hear us through the peeling walls. We'd already been planning to move in together once his lease ended next month. A modest 2-bedroom in the same complex where Alexander lives. Nothing glamorous, but ours. We'd been saving, carefully, secretly. Now, the secret feels like a lifeline, and I'm wondering if we should accelerate the plan before my father tightens the leash. I muted most of my family group chats, but the unread count keeps growing like a living, pulsing thing. The only one I can't ignore is Maria. She swore not to tell anyone I'm crashing at Samuel's tonight. At least I still have her. I love my family. God, I do. But this is madness. It's not 1825, and I'm not some bartered daughter to be traded for contracts and security. Who still arranges marriages in 2024? And over business deals, of all things. Samuel has been supportive, though careful. He keeps saying it's my decision to make, my line to draw. He's right, but all I can think is, no matter what they threaten, no matter how high they raise the stakes, I will not marry Raymond. First update. 2 weeks have passed since that surreal Sunday dinner. Tonight, I'm slumped on Samuel's couch at 1 a.m., stress eating stale cookies from the dollar store while waiting for the kettle to boil water for a makeshift sink shower. The water heater gave out yesterday, and the landlord isn't answering his phone. Honestly, it feels poetic. Chaos on top of chaos. The day after my last post, I slipped back home while I thought my parents were at work to grab some essentials. I was wrong. Maria was curled up on the couch, skipping her community college classes with a fever. She didn't waste a second filling me in while I shoved clothes into a duffel bag. The truth was uglier than I imagined. This wasn't just tradition. Jack's business is circling the drain, and Dad has been stretched thin too. The dripping faucet in the kitchen wasn't just neglect, it was desperation. This marriage isn't about love or even family pride. It's a merger, a deal. They want to fuse the businesses together, use my father's contracts to keep Jack afloat. That's their grand solution. Sell me off like leverage. As if that wasn't humiliating enough, Maria dropped the bomb that my parents had already booked a venue. A converted barn, polished to look rustic, but probably costing more than 3 months of my paychecks. Non-refundable, of course. They signed the contract under the guise of Jack's birthday celebration, but Mum has been parading it as proof of my engagement. She's even been showing it off to relatives like the wedding is a done deal. The fallout has been relentless. Missed calls stack up every day, voicemails dripping with guilt and accusation. Victoria stopped by Samuel's with a bag of winter clothes I'd left at her place and delivered the latest gossip. Mum's been phoning half the family, crying about her selfish daughter throwing her life away. Meanwhile, the family grapevine is churning out gems like Raymond still lives in his parents' basement and he spends all night playing Fortnite. This is who they want for me? This is the future my father keeps shouting about? Work hasn't been safe ground either. My hours were mysteriously cut right after my mum called the store in tears about her troubled daughter. Coincidence? Maybe. But it feels like another knife in the back. I've been scrambling to swap shifts, desperate to cover rent. And Samuel isn't unscathed. His car failed inspection. The repairs cost more than the car itself. His studio wasn't meant for two people, and now we're stepping on each other constantly. His downstairs neighbour keeps lodging noise complaints, so the landlord's already irritated with us. My entire skincare routine currently lives in the bathroom sink because there's nowhere else to put it. Yesterday, I found my mascara wedged in the kitchen cupboard next to the ramen packets. That's our system now. Chaos piled on chaos. The financial squeeze is suffocating. Between my reduced hours, his car disaster, and the constant nickel and dime expenses of sharing a life, the math doesn't add up. I've started selling clothes online just to scrape together some savings. Samuel's been hustling odd jobs through TaskRabbit, coming home exhausted but still trying to smile. And yet, through all the exhaustion and clutter and late-night fights with our landlord over broken heaters, I'd choose this mess, this chaos, this fragile freedom, 1,000 times over being chained to a man I don't love and a life that isn't mine. We've become experts at survival. Rice and beans are no longer side dishes. They're our closest companions. Every dollar has to stretch like taffy, and every grocery run feels like a negotiation with fate. The lowest point came in the most humiliating place possible, Walmart. Samuel and I were crouched over the discount shelves when we ran into my parents. What followed was pure melodrama. Tears in the cereal aisle, accusations about family loyalty, veiled threats about Jack selling out to some faceless corporation if I didn't do my part. My mum's sobs got louder when she noticed the generic brand mac and cheese in our cart. "You deserve better than this," she wailed, as if love tasted cheaper when it came in a cardboard box. We left with our essentials, our pride dented, and her words lingering like bruises. Then came the next blow. My parents had been quietly saving for my wedding since the day I was born. Mum sent me photos of the passbook, page after page of deposits, a grotesque ledger of control. The message was clear: look at all you're throwing away. She attached childhood photos for guilt, screenshots of current venue prices for pressure. Each image was a knife meant to twist deeper. As if fate wanted to join the attack, our carefully planned apartment fell through. The landlord decided to give the unit to his nephew instead, leaving us stranded. Samuel's lease expires in 2 weeks, and every affordable place is either mouldy, microscopic, or already taken. Alexander offered us his spare room in his parents' garage conversion, but moving in there feels like surrender. His mum still does his laundry. What kind of future starts with that? Samuel is trying so hard to keep us afloat, but even he cracks sometimes. Yesterday, I caught him standing in the kitchen, staring at ramen packets with this defeated expression, as though the noodles themselves had won. It broke me in a way my parents' threats never could, and the family won't stop circling like vultures. My phone buzzes constantly with unsolicited wisdom from relatives I barely know. Each one has an opinion on why I'm ruining my life. Maria keeps feeding me updates from the house. Apparently Dad is now threatening to write me out of his will. The irony would be funny if it didn't sting. There's nothing to inherit but debts and a leaky faucet. Whenever doubt creeps in, when the weight of rent, ramen, and rejection feels unbearable, I look at Samuel. Sometimes he's bent over his phone, grinning at Wordle. Other times, he's humming absent-mindedly while washing dishes, water dripping onto the floor. Those small moments remind me, we're not assets, we're not a merger, and no price tag can measure this stubborn, ordinary love. Even if it means sharing one bath towel because I forgot mine during the Great Escape. For now, we're surviving day by day, apartment hunting during lunch breaks, blocking new numbers as they pop up, eating ramen by the glow of our phones. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. Second update. Hey, Reddit, it's me again. Some of you might remember my post about my parents trying to chain me into an arranged marriage with Raymond. Well, a lot has happened. I'm writing this from a 45-a-night motel room, eating leftover pizza in a crumpled Amazon dress that cost me $30. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of when I was a little girl, but in its own weird way, it was perfect. The decision to elope wasn't sudden. It was born out of exhaustion and defiance. The final straw came when Maria sent me a photo of the pre-engagement party invitations my parents were already mailing out. My name, my future husband's name, a life signed and sealed without me. Seeing it in print snapped something inside me. Samuel and I had whispered about marriage for weeks, half dreaming between bowls of microwave mac and cheese. One night, while sharing food and watching our neighbour's cat, a stray we named Princess even though she doesn't belong to us, we looked at each other and just knew. We wanted this. We wanted us. So we picked a random Tuesday, not because it was special, but because we both had the day off and the courthouse had an opening. Alexander, Samuel's best friend, not my dad's, agreed to stand witness. I ordered a simple white dress online, the kind that looked angelic in photos, and slightly sad in person. Samuel wore his one decent shirt, the button down without wrinkles. And of course, nothing went smoothly. The zipper on my dress jammed. Samuel's car coughed and died, forcing us to improvise. But as messy as it was ours, flawed, inconvenient, imperfect. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free. We couldn't even afford the ride to the courthouse on our own. Samuel called an Uber, and the three of us, him, me, and Alexander, split the fare because we were all broke. The driver kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror, asking why we were dressed up. Court appointment, we said in unison. Not technically a lie. The ceremony itself was over in less than 10 minutes. The clerk processed our paperwork while eating a sandwich, barely looking up, crumbs dotting the counter. In the corner, a man filled out jury duty forms, like his life depended on it. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't glamorous. But Samuel's hand was in mine, steady and warm, and that was enough. I almost dropped the $12 ring we'd bought, and we both broke into uncontrollable laughter. Alexander captured it by accident. Most of his photos were blurry, but that one shot of us laughing, faces turned toward each other like no one else existed, became our wedding portrait. We celebrated the only way we could, at a diner around the corner. We split a plate of fries and a milkshake because that's all our budget allowed. Alexander insisted on paying for his own coffee, calling it his wedding gift. The waitress, bless her, slipped us 2 slices of free pie when she found out we were married. It was the first stroke of luck we'd had all day, maybe all month. The hard part came after. Telling people. We decided on a simple Instagram post, just that one good photo with the caption, "So, we did a thing." The responses came fast. Victoria fired off a string of heart emojis. Maria called immediately, her voice breaking between laughter and tears. She was happy for us, but terrified of the storm she knew was coming. She wasn't wrong. Mom saw the post while at the grocery store and called me from the parking lot, sobbing so violently the cart attendant asked if she needed help. Her voice cracked over and over. How could I do this to the family? How could she ever show her face in church again? What about the venue deposit? Dad's fury came through Maria. Apparently he hurled his phone against the wall when he saw the photo. Jack stormed over to their house within the hour, dragging Raymond with him. The irony? Raymond himself liked our Instagram post and even commented congratulations. That didn't exactly soothe anyone's pride. The extended family lit up every corner of the internet with their reactions. Shocked Facebook messages, angry texts, a few whispered congratulations, and even a cousin tagging me in a TikTok about ungrateful children. Classy. Meanwhile, Samuel and I hid out in a motel that smelled faintly of cigarettes and disappointment. The Wi-Fi cut out every 10 minutes, but it was our first home as husband and wife. We ordered cheap takeout, watched random YouTube videos on Samuel's phone, and tried to make the best of it. Then came the fallout from the venue. Turns out my parents had tried to cancel my engagement party, but the deposit was long gone. Now they're spinning a story about how I forced them to book it in the first place. A creative rewrite of history. Money's tighter than ever. I'm selling clothes on Poshmark. Samuel's grabbing every extra shift he can. The apartment we applied for isn't much. A ground floor 1-bedroom with a strange layout and no dishwasher. But if we get it, it'll be ours. The leasing office promised an answer by Friday, and every hour feels like a countdown. Maria remains my only reliable source of intel. She told me Mum redecorated my old room already, stripping the walls of photos like I never existed. Dad tells people at work I'm going through a phase, while Jack's wife keeps scheming about a family meeting to fix things. The strangest twist, though, came from Raymond himself. He DM'd me to say he was actually relieved. He's been secretly dating someone for over a year, a streamer who also happens to be a single mum. He knows Jack will explode when he finds out, but for once, Raymond sounded free. Like maybe my rebellion cracked something open for him too. Samuel and I are still stumbling forward, one day at a time. Sometimes I wake up in the motel panicked, second-guessing everything. But then Samuel does something ridiculous, like trying to cook ramen in the coffee maker. And I remember exactly why I chose this life. It isn't perfect, but it's ours. Sometimes the truth doesn't announce itself. It seeps in quietly, like floodwater. It happened after last week's storm. Maria called me in a panic. The basement was filling fast, and Mum and Dad were off at some church fundraiser. Samuel and I drove over, wading through ankle-deep water to help her salvage what we could. Boxes floated like wreckage from a shipwreck, the smell of damp cardboard and mildew already clinging to everything. That's when I saw it. Dad's old filing cabinet tipped on its side, drawers gaping open, papers spilling everywhere. Most were ruined, ink bleeding into unreadable swirls. But a few were salvageable. And what we found among them changed everything. Loan documents, dozens of them. Jack's signature was on every one, my dad's name beneath it as guarantor. The trail stretched back years, small amounts at first, then larger, riskier ones. The latest loan was dated just before this whole marriage fiasco began. Some carried red final notice stamps. Others had payment schedules with entire rows of missed check marks. It was like holding a timeline of Jack's business slowly drowning. Then came the stranger discovery. Printed out emails between Dad and a major development company. They'd been circling, interested in buying both businesses, Dad's and Jack's, but only if they came as a package deal. Their offer was generous enough to erase the debts and leave a cushion besides. But there was a catch. They wanted proof of stable succession planning. In other words, no merger without blood binding it together. A family alliance. An heir. That's where I came in. Where Raymond came in. The perfect facade. 2 families tied in marriage. A shiny ribbon on a sinking ship. While I was still reeling, Maria unearthed more. Jack had been hiding everything from his wife. He'd mortgaged their house, twice, without her knowledge. Dad had co-signed, probably out of blind loyalty, believing Jack would bounce back. And buried under it all, a draft contract. Dated just before the marriage proposal. Proof Jack was already selling off equipment to cover overdue payments. Proof that my father's 20 years of sweat and sacrifice were about to collapse because he trusted the wrong man. I snapped photos of everything before the water ruined it. Then I sent them to Raymond. He deserved to know. His reply came quickly. Well, that explains the rush. Apparently Jack had been pressuring him to settle down for months, even trying to sabotage his relationship with his girlfriend. The dominoes fell fast after that. Victoria showed up at our apartment with housewarming ramen and the latest gossip. Jack's wife found out about the second mortgage and moved in with her sister. Raymond finally told everyone about his girlfriend and her kid. They're living together now. Jack, meanwhile, is staying with his brother, likely because his wife changed the locks. Dad still won't speak to me directly. Instead, he peppers Maria with strange questions. Am I eating enough? Do I like the new place? It's as if he can't face me but can't let go either. Mum, meanwhile, has shifted tactics, from angry Facebook rants to bittersweet, missing my daughter memes. Progress, I guess. Then, yesterday, a text from Jack. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I haven't answered. I don't know if I ever will. Through it all, Samuel has been steady. He doesn't dissect the mess or offer empty reassurances. He just holds me when I break, cracks bad jokes when I get too serious, and dreams out loud about ridiculous futures. Last night, he suggested we start a business selling tiny hats for cats online. For a moment, I actually laughed. We're managing. The apartment's slowly coming together. We scored a bed frame off Facebook Marketplace. Our upstairs neighbour's kid practices trumpet at 7 a.m. sharp, and at first it grated, but now it feels almost like routine. I'm piecing together extra shifts. Samuel's delivering food on weekends. It isn't glamorous, but the bills are getting paid. Back at home, Maria says Dad spends most of his time in the garage now, probably trying to figure out how to rebuild. The development company pulled their offer once the merger collapsed. Without it, Mum's been whispering on the phone about selling the house. The same house they've lived in since before I was born. Part of me aches with guilt. Another part seethes with anger. Because no matter how much I love them, no matter how much history is stacked in those walls, they tried to trade my life to fix mistakes that were never mine. Mostly, I'm just tired. Tired of the drama, the debts, the family feuds, the business nightmares that were never mine to solve. But since so many of you have followed this chaos from the beginning, I figured you deserved to know how it all turned out. So here it is, the surreal Thanksgiving that closed the loop on this entire arranged marriage disaster. First, the basics. Samuel and I are still in our little apartment. We finally ditched the air mattress, hello, actual bed frame, and our neighbour's kid has graduated from trumpet to drums. Progress, I guess. The upside is our other neighbour works at a furniture outlet and hooked us up with a slightly damaged couch. It has a weird stain shaped suspiciously like Danny DeVito, but it's ridiculously comfortable, so we don't care. The biggest shift came a couple of months ago. Mom started sending me these odd late-night thinking of you texts. At first I ignored them, figuring they were written with one hand while she scrolled through tearjerker Facebook videos with the other. But then she asked to meet for coffee. I went, partly to end the awkward grocery store encounters, partly because a tiny part of me wanted to. We met at the same diner where Samuel and I had celebrated our wedding reception over fries and pie. She cried into her coffee. I stirred my tea until it went cold, and somehow we actually talked. Not screamed, not accused. Talked. Dad's business survived, though barely. They downsized, sold off equipment, moved into a smaller office. Jack's company wasn't so lucky. Speaking of Jack, he and his wife are officially separated. She got the house in the divorce. Those secret mortgages were the final nail. Jack's been crashing with his brother, who now charges him rent. Raymond, though, landed on his feet. He moved in with his girlfriend and her kid, started streaming on Twitch and, ironically, makes real money now. His mum says he's happier than he's ever been. He and Samuel even game together sometimes, which is weird but kind of sweet. Dad took longer to thaw. The breakthrough came in the most mundane way possible. Our car broke down again. At this point, it's basically held together with prayers and duct tape. Samuel was bent over the hood in the parking lot when Dad just showed up. Maria had mentioned it to Mum. Mum mentioned it to Dad, and suddenly he was there, handing Samuel a wrench. They didn't talk much, just worked side by side until the engine coughed back to life. Since then, they've developed this strange ritual of sending each other car maintenance videos. Dad still barely texts me, but he'll message Samuel links to auto parts sales. Baby steps. And then came Thanksgiving. Mum had been hinting for weeks that we should come. I hesitated, but Samuel pointed out that free food is free food, and let's be real, we're still on a tight budget. So we went. It was awkward. Aunt Hannah made barbed comments about unconventional life choices. Uncle Jeremy pretended we were invisible. But Maria and Victoria ran interference like seasoned diplomats, and Mum. Mum had put our wedding photo on the mantel, right next to my tragic 7th grade school portrait, the one with braces and butterfly clips. The real shock was Jack's ex-wife. She showed up with the most incredible sweet potato casserole and spent dinner talking about her journey of self-discovery and new hobbies. Dad looked like he wanted to bury himself in his mashed potatoes. The highlight, though, was when my cousin Alexander, not Samuel's Alexander, tried to keep up, announced his engagement. Instantly, the table erupted in talk of venues and flowers and guest lists, and across all the noise, Mum caught my eye and winked. Progress. Our life isn't glamorous. The apartment is small, the rent is tight, and the ring Samuel bought me for $12 has finally turned my finger green. But honestly, I kind of love it. It matches our aesthetic. Samuel's car still makes that death rattle, but we're saving for a new one, slowly but surely. Work is steady, not exciting, but steady. Samuel's taking online courses in computer stuff. I'm considering it too, though right now I'm focused on scraping together extra shifts. Maria drops by constantly, usually armed with food from Mum. I suspect she's half sister, half spy, reporting back on whether we're eating vegetables and keeping the place clean. But she also brings the latest family gossip. Jack drifting, Raymond settling into fatherhood, because his girlfriend's little boy now calls him Papa D. And me? I don't know if I've forgiven my parents entirely. Maybe forgiveness isn't a single act, but 1,000 tiny ones. Coffee at a diner, a wink across a Thanksgiving table, a dad quietly handing your husband a wrench. It's not the life they planned for me. It's not even the life I planned for myself. But it's real. It's ours, and for the first time that feels like enough.